to introduce the director of the feature film and also one of the actors that appears in the film, Prince Bagdasarian and Ken Davitian.
Hey guys, did you enjoy the movie?
It was snowing.
It was snowing, yes.
Well, welcome to Toronto. We're so glad that you guys could be here, and this is the second appearance for both of you at POM. You were both here for Abstraction earlier. Can you let us know how this bromance began?
Bromance?
Yeah,
You could call it that, right?
Sure.
you called me.
I did. I
That
called
was it.
you. I called Ken in 2012.
I don't know.
Yeah.
Abstraction, right?
2012, called him. I said I have a role for him, and he asked if he needs to get naked. And I said, and if he needs to make love with a woman or a man. And I said it might be a woman, so yeah.
And it was.
And it was.
It
yeah.
was my first female, male, and ever been.
Okay, anyway.
That was another movie.
So that was Abstraction. We were here in 2013, POM, and we went all around the film festival circuits, and then the movie got distribution worldwide and whatnot. And then Ken and I went to do other projects, obviously, and then this one came to fruition in 2016, where I was approached by some people who had seen Abstraction, and Ken and I, and collaboration and whatnot, and they wanted to know how to make a action film on a small budget. And so I guess I was the right guy for it, because it ended up we ended up collaborating with Imagineering Pictures, and it was this film that you saw, Diverted Eden, years later.
Thank you so much. And we'd also like to take this time to open up questions to the audience. Any questions? Yes, please.
How many shoot days, Prince, overall?
Shoot days. We shot about 25 days of primary production days, and then everything else that was action oriented or required very limited crew or things like that, we separated that out to another 12 production days as pickups. So in order, I mean, it's really hard to pull off an action film and also an action film with story and heart, and be able to do it on such a small budget. So we had to like separate out certain things, and issue like certain scenes had to be shot separately to accommodate that budget and whatnot. So yeah. And then Ken was part of the pickups in the snow, and he hated the cold every minute of it.
Then I came to a film festival. In the snow. Everything's in the snow. I don't understand. I'm from LA. Never snowed. It's nice.
One day it'll snow in LA. Hillary?
Yeah. What is the plan for the movie? Has it got distribution? Because I didn't get a chance to see the end credits.
Yes, the film was sold about 6 months ago, and Artists of View Entertainment picked it up, and it is getting worldwide release, international, primarily for TV and things like that. The film is also retitled from Diverted Eden to Abducted, and it's also 90 minutes. So the cut you guys saw today, you'll be the last audience to ever see this version of the movie, which is the director my cut, basically. And I've shown this at every single festival so far, and unfortunately they had to cut it for TV for timing purposes. So yeah, Abducted.
Running time now?
90 minutes.
No, but was this?
This is an hour and 50 minutes, so 110.
Okay.
Yeah. Gato?
Hi. Is it open-ended because you can have seasons?
Good question. I got that from one other person who. It's funny, you weren't here for the whole movie. How did you figure that out? It's interesting. I'm going to talk to you later. But yes, it is open-ended. So the idea for the ending was that there's a law firm of Edward and Lewis, and the other character, which we don't see because it's two people who run the law firm, and so we only see one of the characters at the end get threatened by this guy, and so I kind of left. I didn't want to go too violent at the end because we've already seen enough violence throughout the film anyway. So, and then, honestly, his daughter wasn't hurt, and she came out of it unscratched and whatnot. So, at the end of the day, it was just a threat, and I kind of wanted to leave it open-ended. Whereas he gets out of the limousine and he makes a phone call, and there was a scene written that I wrote where he calls the guy who really runs the law firm, and he's the mastermind behind the whole operation. And there was this particular actor that was going to be attached to the film to star in it, and when he couldn't do the project, he's somebody from Marvel movies and things like that. So when he couldn't do the project, I deleted the scene. We just wrapped it up that way, and we said let's leave it like that. And if there is a sequel, maybe we'll get that guy.
Is there a short fat guy in the sequel?
Yeah, actually, his character's alive, so he'll be back in the sequel if there is one. Yeah.
To Russia with the whole movie. You saw the movie in Russia with some Russian policemen. What the heck is going on?
That was in Syria.
In Syria, okay.
In Syria, yeah. What was your question? I'm sorry.
Yeah, what does he have to do with the rest of the
I
movie?
think he's mistaken the opening short as part of your.
Oh, the short had nothing to do with my film. See, Sevok, see what you guys did. Confused the audience. The Russian short had nothing to do with my film. So after the tree comes up with the logo, that's my film. Can we rewind that? So you can... Okay, no. Anybody else?
What was your most,
Yeah.
what was the most challenging thing other than raising money when you were doing shoot? Can you share a story that was very difficult, that it ended up being resolved in the end, obviously, but something that you didn't plan for?
Yes. There's a city called Santa Clarita, which you know of, which we shot most of the abduction scenes, and the mansion that we had was in that city. So in that particular year we were shooting, it was the worst storm in Santa Clarita ever in the history of storms in Santa Clarita. So there was 70-mile-an-hour winds, and our equipment, our lighting, our grip, and like camera equipment, things were getting wet, and there was like hail and all this stuff. So all that stuff you saw in the film in the beginning of all the police coming in with the vehicles and all that stuff, that's all in the rain. We didn't use any rain machines. We just said, you know what, we're just gonna go ahead and incorporate that into the film, and it was authentic, so it worked out, and it adds to the flavor and the texture, and it's kind of a character on its own. The weather, I wanted to bring that out in post as well, with sound and thunder and the darkness in the beginning during the kidnapping. Yeah.
I have a question about the musical arrangement and the choice of the music. But by the way, it's a very good choice, and the dynamics of the movie were perfectly respected because it was keeping from the beginning to the end in a very good dynamic. Can you just talk about the person or the group who created the music for the film and how it's happened? Was it something ready or was it done after? Just tell.
So his question was about the music. So the composer, his name is Ramin Kusha. He's worked with, he's studied under Hans Zimmer, the composer, and it's funny, we saw a Jivan Gasparian short documentary, and Hans Zimmer utilized Jivan's music in Gladiator and all that stuff. So he uses a similar tone. He's not Armenian, but he's Middle Eastern, so he brings that Middle Eastern feel to it. But at the same time, it's very big budget, very high-end, blockbuster-looking, feeling music. And so Ramin and I met about maybe 10 years ago, and we started collaborating on every film that I've done so far has been Ramin scoring it. And this is my third feature film so far, and he scored all of the films, including Abstraction, which was here 5 years ago as well.
You can congratulate him because if you say that it's a low-budget movie, the musical part was really great because it really gave a very good impression of action in the movie.
Thank you. I'll let him know for sure. Thank you so much. Yeah, the music definitely adds to the edge of your seat aspect of the whole thing. Yeah, thank you. Yes.
What's your next project? Anything that is lining up for you?
Yes, I have a couple projects. I can't really talk about them because things never come to fruition and they die in development. So yeah, a project called Bluebird and another one called Uncontrolled, which likely will be, one of those will go sometime in the next year or so, who knows? Or maybe another one will fall into my lap, and I'll take that. Thank you for the question. Ken, do you want to add anything to this?
No.
No?
No.
Okay, we can all go home.
I had a question for Ken.
Oh,
How you stumbled into the film racket. I mean, you're obviously known for The Artist and Borat, but maybe you can tell us a little about your earlier career and how you actually, I mean, your English is amazing. I don't know if you grew up in the States.
my English is amazing because I grew up in East LA. I wanted to do theater since I was 13, and I was in the rubbish business with the family and always following this. That's all I really wanted to do. So I did 120 different appearances before Borat, and nobody knew who the hell I was. And after that, it's very freeing running around naked. And it worked. So they keep calling me.
Before we wrap this up, I just wanted to give a quick little story about what happened with this gentleman who's filming my behind the scenes right here for this interview. So Armin here was in the audience when I was here in 2013. He was sitting in the audience and he asked me a question about how I financed my movie, and he was not a filmmaker at the time. And I was here talking, and I guess I somehow, I'm not gonna take credit, but somehow maybe I attributed to, maybe his inspiration for being a filmmaker or whatnot. And he became a filmmaker, and he's made a bunch of shorts and films, and some of which have been at POM, and there was one recently as well. And I bumped into him in LA, in Los Angeles, and he was at a festival, and he told me this story, and I had no idea who he is. And but it was inspiring for me because I was like, wow, somebody actually took my advice on stage and in the audience, complete stranger in Toronto. And yeah, so maybe someone in here is going to become a filmmaker next and submit 5 years from now.
Go be a doctor.
Go be a doctor, I said. Good idea. Thank you guys.
On behalf of the Pomegranate Film Festival, we'd like to present you with this Narine Jewelry Money Clip.
Money clip, thank you. Thank you, money clip, guys. Thank you so much, Mom. Appreciate that.
I'd like to present you with this book,
Oh,
The Seamstress of Corfa.
and I know her.
Wonderful.
Thank you.
Thank
Can we
you.
exchange? You have more money than I do.
No, I have a money clip.
Thank you, guys.
And we also want to just remind everyone to vote for the Audience Choice Awards and kindly stay for the 8 o'clock screening. We hope to see you then.